Hi, I'm Francis Hellier, and welcome to my podcast, Metaverse. Dedicated to the emerging world of the metaverse, this podcast aims to demystify and unpack the possibilities of the digital future that's just dawning over the horizon. In each episode, I talk with leaders in this growing space who are forging our new reality, from innovators in AR and VR to futurists in crypto and space travel, and forecasters in business and tech. Together we ask the question, what's next? Today I'm joined by Anthony Batt, co-founder of Weaver and former founder and chief executive of Buzz Media. Anthony Batt describes himself as a serial entrepreneur with years of experience as a software engineer, product designer, and enthusiast for making innovative products. In 2004, Anthony founded Buzz Media, an early photo sharing community that pioneered social media. Buzz Media created and purchased 45 acclaimed media brands, such as BuzzNet, Spin, Just Jared, CelebBuzz, and many more. Its software platform and marketing strategy started the modern internet influencer, launching with social media stars like Kim and Khloe Kardashian and Jeffree Star. Anthony is most recently the founder of Weaver, a leading interactive software company that produces top-of-the-range virtual worlds, pushing the boundaries both technologically and artificially. Their first original production, The Blue, is an award-winning and immersive experience, recognized as one of the most iconic VR titles to date, earning collaborations with the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles, the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and many more. At the forefront of the metaverse ecosystem, Weaver is developing a cloud software platform, Weaver Virtual Studio, which will enable 3D artists to easily make and share 3D projects and participate directly in the co-creation of the future metaverse. Anthony also played a pivotal role in making the Harry Potter VR experiences in New York actually come to life. Anthony, what an incredible introduction, if I don't mind saying so myself. It's fantastic to have.
It's overwhelming to listen to. It was like
I'm exhausted. I mean, I couldn't take a breath in that. So it's great to have you on the show, and welcome to the metaverse.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, that intro is very sort of like it made me a little exhausted and amazed, but yeah, thanks. I think the most exciting thing that you mentioned was in all that is that we've been sort of spending a lot of time at Weaver trying to discover what immersive worlds are, you know what I mean? And that takes time, you know what I mean? You can't just pop out and do it. It's one of those crafts where, like filmmaking, that you actually have to spend a lot of time doing it before you kind of feel like you're like ready for the major leagues. And I actually feel like today, the people that I've worked with on all the projects that we've been doing at Weaver, our team, our extended team, meaning like developers that we work with, we've all spent a lot of time in building, and now like this whole metaverse world is sort of kind of like starting to come to life. We're all really sort of like really skilled at sort of like taking it to the next level, and that's really exciting. That's what I heard in that intro is just like, we're really excited about building the metaverse.
Yeah, you thought you sounded cool, right? That's what it is. Well, you describe yourself as a serial entrepreneur. Have you always had an entrepreneurial spirit? Is that something that goes deep?
Yeah, it really does go deep. And to me, like entrepreneurship's like it's for me, that's what they call folks like me, what we do, you know what I mean? But like really what I look for traditionally, even when I was a teenager, was like, how do I make something that requires no permission? Right? And that meant way back when I was making, zines, which are just little paper magazines that you would assemble with your mates and like Xerox copy them at night at someone's Xerox machine. And we would then have those to distribute. So like we required no permission. So it didn't need anyone's, you didn't need to get a job anywhere. You could just kind of do your art and like distribute it and boom, it's done. And I think that sort of spirit of just making stuff without permission, turns out that's what entrepreneurs do. You know what I mean? Like you don't ask for permission. You're just like, I have this idea. It's really exciting. And you kind of go and circulate it with people that fund entrepreneurs. And they go, we believe in that. That's a great idea. Like, let's go for it. And then hence you sort of like become kind of an entrepreneur. And so I really don't know how to do anything else. Like I come, like either an idea comes to me and I'm like very interested in it, I want to join that idea, or I come up with the idea myself and I go and bring other people in, and then we kind of go get funding. So hence the serial means it's just the way of life for me. You know what I mean? It just frankly is what I do.
You got a wealth of experience in software engineering and product design. Was the experience beneficial to your business ventures? And if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, I tended to like, so the thing is like when you look at like what I call permissionless media, like if you wanted to put something on a movie screen or a television screen, it really required, or even like a record, like you wanted to make a record, like it really required you asking permission from many people, many gatekeepers to sort of say, hey, I want to make a TV show, or I want to make a record, I want to make all this stuff. You needed to ask a lot of people for permission. And it turned out that the computer screen, you needed no permission. Like you had the computer, you drew your image on the computer using Mac Paint, or you wrote some code and you made something happen. It required no permission. So what happened was, for me early on, having early Macintosh in my life as a teenager, I was just like, I'd put this on my screen and my friends would come over and look at the screen and be like, oh, that's cool. And like, then we made a video game, and then so it was just sort of like the way to get something put on a screen that required the least amount of permission. Turned out that you had to become a programmer, right? And so programming and doing stuff with technology provided me that sort of reward. Therefore, I did more of it, which then therefore I became fluent with technology code. And then, along came 1993, 94, the early World Wide Web came out. And for a lot of people that aren't sort of in the looking at webs at screens in 93, the World Wide Web was not wasn't a per se a browser, like as you know it now. Like we're actually communicating through a browser, which is quite amazing if you think about it. But it was actually text links. So like you would see the word world with W capitalized wide web, and you would actually cursor down and tap it, and there'd be a list of links, but they were text links. And so the browser started to kind of come to fruition in like 94, 95 with Netscape. But prior to that, it was just text links. And once that happened, I was like, wow, I can actually just, code this page and it's listed there. And then, for a lot of people, they don't realize that there wasn't even an image tag for you to put an image on a web screen. So when you became fluent in writing that code, which became web apps, the whole world unlocked for people in 94 that knew how to do that really well. And so I was, getting back to your question, like about technology, it was, it was basically, you knew how to speak a language of web, which gave you this immense power to program and present. And so I just sort of was able to kind of get in there early and go around the world building web pages. Then that became web apps, that became mobile apps, those became games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You've done a phenomenal job. Do you think that we're at the same point now? So the way you describe what was the World Wide Web, now just everyone it's called the internet. When we look at a Web3, do you feel like we have the same opportunity of having sort of a permissionless space?
Yeah, it's 100% accurate. So like the Web3 is really almost a callback to, like, the origins of Web3 is really a callback to Web1.
Yes.
Is because the Web2, which I was a member of and a core kind of contributor to building Web2, Web2 was really built on the previous software paradigms, where you had really great investors, you had really great entrepreneurs, you had really great products, and those were really designed for maximum value to shareholders. And you made a great product for users. And that's a perfectly acceptable model, and we're going to still need to have all those communities working that way. But what's happening now is that the users of software are really, really rich, vibrant communities. And what's happening in the Web3 space is, if you want to go build a really cool product, the big guys have all the money and they just adopt it very quickly into their application stack, and you kind of can't make the living. Or the model of where you want to make your product is really primarily occupied by platforms like YouTube or these systems where you have gateways in between you. So you kind of like lose either 30% or 50%, or in the case of YouTube and Instagram, they use 100% of your revenue in a sense. So the Web3 is really going like, well, how do we actually go build something where we're actually super excited about building it, and we don't want to be beholden to like what I call the ad drip, or other people call it the ad drip, where it's like you have to be ad sponsored and therefore you have to do exactly what they want, and you have to kind of be on that mechanism, or you have to be where you really want to be beholden to is your community. You're building this great product for those users, and therefore Web3 is really saying like, how do we actually make that the builders and the users or the community are mutually benefit in the making of it all. And so I really see that as a throwback to the Web 1, because when you started building web pages in communities back then, there wasn't a monetization system. And so you really were like almost building it together. And then the open source community was also really a key driver to what's happening in Web 1, and it happened in Web 2, but the value extraction in Web 2 never trickled down into all the open source developers. So you kind of see this new version where it's like, hey, we're building this product, we're using open source software, we're going to open source it, and we're going to actually have some sort of tokenization of this community so that we can build it. And you can see how that influences the metaverse, because it's like the metaverse are like really vibrant, rich, sometimes and often three-dimensional places, and everyone should be an owner and an operator and contributor to it. And some are greater, some are less than, but even if you're a hyper community user, you're valuable to the system, you're essential. Whereas the developer is also essential and valuable, but there shouldn't be a strict distinction. And the reward system should be rewarding all, you know what I mean? And right now, Web 2 doesn't really do that. It just rewards one class of people, the entrepreneur and the investor, and not the user. And that model is tired.
That's exactly right. I think, and I think that there is that palpable feeling of excitement around Web3, isn't there? And the metaverse, as we describe it, where all different kinds of creators see the opportunities, because they are looking back at Web 1. They are considering all the problems that we've had sort of with Web 2 and trying to find a way through. It's a very, very exciting time. And I'm sure you've had many conversations about that. Now let's go back to BuzzNet. BuzzNet's responsible for the launch of some of the very first social media stars like Kim Kardashian, Khloe Kardashian, Jeffree Star. What are your thoughts on the evolution of the internet influencer and the marketing movements around that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that so BuzzNet was like really early in the days. We were sort of sort of neck and neck in launching with Facebook. But like, if you think about Facebook was very much about social networking. So it was like, hey, I know you, you know me, and we link, and we then like see each other's posts. But it was very much like a handshake. And what we were really pioneering at BuzzNet was, and Buzz Media was, how does one contributor at the edge of this global network of the internet, how does someone that's just one individual who has like a dynamic range of expression express themselves? And they don't need to handshake with everyone. They're just like, they're the expression. It's like, hey, look at me, I'm doing this cool thing, or I'm making this or doing this. And so what we looked for is content creators at the edge of the network, and we wanted to actually shine a light on them. And we really sort of called it social media. I remember going around Silicon Valley going like, well, we're not social networking, we're social media. And people would be like, what is social media? Like literally, like they just, like they asked me. And I was like, and I would explain it as like, social networking is about networking. Like you're building a network. And at the time when you're building your network, it was just that. It was like, I have all these fake friends. And what I was trying to say was like, well, no, it's about social media, meaning like this one individual in the network is actually expressing a range of content or storytelling that many want to follow. And so BuzzNet had a thing called follow, right? We had a link called follow. We didn't have a thing where it was like, I'm your friend, because you were not a friend of these people, right? And so that was sort of the first principle in Buzz Media. And at the other time, there was another company called Flickr, which was literally a photo sharing site. And Flickr was really about like sharing photos, and they were contemplating the DSLR camera. They weren't even contemplating a camera on a phone. And in fact, we started BuzzNet, where the phone had an attachment of a camera. And I'll often get interviewed by people, and they'd be like, it'd be a very serious interviewer, like, so Anthony, do you really believe the phone will have a camera on it? Like, and I'd be like, yeah, yes, like, of course, like, and they would just be like, they would be like so perplexed, because a camera to them was this bulky thing with lenses and things, and a phone. I mean, you got to go back. A phone was a Motorola SmartTAC. It was a flip phone. There was no camera. It was like they couldn't imagine the world of phone in a camera. So, I mean, that is perplexing. So when I told people that, they would just be perplexed. But getting back to your original question, which was like, the influencer and stuff like that. So I always knew that the influencers of all sort of like cultures always come from the fringe, right? Like Andy Warhol was a fringe influencer, right? Like he wasn't accepted by like mainstream media. He had to fight his way in. Or punk rock, the Sex Pistols weren't like in the middle. They weren't middle. They were like on the fringes, fighting their way in to become recognized. And so when you realize that the fringe thinking is always at the edge, so we looked for fringe folks. We looked for people that were like doing stuff that was very avant-garde. And Jeffree Star was a very interesting person in the emo scene, and I was like, hey, like, let's shine a light on Jeffree. And then also with Kim, there's a very interesting story with Kim. So what we did at BuzzNet was we would look at our data, very closely, and we kept on seeing these comments about, and it might sound derogatory, I'll repeat it, but back a decade ago wasn't. But the comment kept on saying, "Who's the thick chick in the back?" And I kept on saying, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand it. But we kept on seeing this statement, and people were liking that statement, and we kind of didn't understand it. So finally, we were looking at the image, and we were in this room, and one of our maybe it was an assistant. She said, "I know who that is. That's Paris Hilton's assistant. Her name's Kim." And we were like, oh, that's so weird. It's just getting all this traffic, all this activity, and all these comments. And I said, let's do a deal with her. Like we didn't know who she was. She was literally just some Paris's assistant. And so what happened was I had a department in my company that would go and find it. So we have data. Like data tells us a story, right? We would see velocity on an image, and we would then look at that image and find out who's in that image. Why is that image getting popular? And then what we did is we did a deal. And then we met when we met with Kim was, I think, a teenager at the time. So I think she was under 18. And so we ended up talking to her mom, and we were like, hey, we want to put a blog together. We're going to call it Kim Kardashian. And she was like, well, why don't you do All the Sisters? That was a cool story. We made a lot of money.
You made history.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bizarre story. Like, like I just saw a poster of the Kardashians in LA. Like I guess they got a new TV show coming out. But I was just like, I just go back to those days going like, we would have like in my mind, I knew that all these interesting, by the way, Kim Kardashian is just one of them, but we worked with Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance, like we put Paramore, like it wasn't just one person. It was also like this band or these people. But like when you look back in time and people always ask me like, they're like, why didn't you do the TV show? I was like, well, like I'm kind of a computer programmer person, a digital product maker, like TV. I don't do TV, right? Like, so it didn't occur to me. And even though I was generating a lot of ad revenue on early Kim pages and also like Chloe, Britney Spears, like all of we did so many, it didn't occur to me that it would be a television show. So really hats off to the Kardashian family and the people that make those TV shows, because they really took someone that was a social media person and really said, no, we're going to make it this pop culture center stage. I don't have that claim, but I know that I helped start that sort of trend. And it really gave birth to influencer, what we now call social media influencers. Like they got started on Buzz Media, that we really poured a lot of money and attention onto all those people. But kind of the takeaway for here in the metaverse, I think is really important, is like, those were communities. At the heart of them, they were communities. The Kardashians and Britney Spears and My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy, like we created a sub community called, with Pete Wentz, called Friends and Enemies. You know what I mean? Because he had this concept that like your friend is your enemy, and then your enemy is your friend, and your friend's your enemy. So we created a cult community called Friends or Enemy with Pete. Those were all scrolling communities. You scroll and you look at a photo and but those communities are going to become 3-dimensional. You'll eventually stand and be inside those communities. The other thing about those communities, they're always were there. So like when you went to school and you you came home and you turned on your computer, because mind you, they didn't have browsers on the phone back then, they were there. And more importantly, the people that were in the comments were there. That was the community. And so when you start thinking about the metaverse, it's like that same fundamental first principles, like a persistent world with a persistent set of people all in a space trading, time and friendship. That's what's going to happen in the metaverse.
So how do you think influencer marketing will work in the metaverse?
It will take shapes and forms differently, but the core principle behind social media and marketing will probably persist the same way. Do you know what I mean? I think that you're kind of seeing it with sort of the NFT culture, where like there's dominant NFTs that are like that mean something. They in themselves are this like permissionless, content that's become very vogue, and people are gravitating towards it, and it means something. That the mechanism of the marketing of that operated the same, but the meaning and the consumption of it hasn't really changed. But with a full expression of it will probably be that you can embody IRL spaces with it and also virtual spaces with it. But the idea that the metaverse, to me, I have a very sort of broad picture of the metaverse. It's not so, I'm not a maximist, you know what I mean? There are people that are like, no, it's this. And I'm like, okay, that's okay for you. But for me, the metaverse actually is transcendent. It's like, it transcends into IRL.
We don't know what it is yet, do we? That's the exciting part about it.
Exactly. So I have like an expanding vision of it. I do believe that it's persistent, and there's like rich conversation and play attributes to it, but I wouldn't say it's only this. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like your question is the marketing, or is it gonna, how's it gonna take from? I think it uses a lot of what's traditionally used. But I think that the currently, and we hope it stays this way, one of the successful metaverse-like products that are emerging, there's a genuineness to it. There's like a demand for being fair and equitable and inclusive. And that principles we want to actually continue to keep going. And we want to avoid predatory, extracting culture from coming into the metaverse. And I think that if we can kind of keep those communities focused on being genuine and inclusive and doing the right thing rather than extracting, then we're winning. That's what I want to see happen.
100% agreed. What piqued your interest in virtual reality?
Virtual reality to me is just well, from a technical standpoint, it's the most awesome expression of like computing, right? It's like we're gonna take over it all, like ears and eyes, and we're gonna draw the whole world for you. You know what I mean? It's like, do you want to try to do that? Hell yeah, I want to try and do that. And there's such a technical hurdle to achieve that, right? It's virtual reality is fighting you all the way up the slope of making it. It's not easy. It's very hard. It's so hard to do. And it's getting easier, but really good virtual reality, there's so much subtle nuance, and it requires all of the principles of creativity to manifest itself in a team, right? You need great software engineering, you need great creative, you need great audio designers, you need great haptic design. It's like the whole thing, you're designing virtual reality, right? So it's like, how do you do that? It's so hard. And if you think about it, it makes you take for granted how wonderful reality is. The trees, the birds, the people, all the different kinds of people you meet, the animals, the creatures. It's like, that is a reality that took hundreds of millions of years to create itself. It's like, and it's evolutionary. So it's driven by code. Like DNA is code, right? So when you're like going like, hey, I'm going to make virtual reality, it's like, dude, people, like that's hard. And so that to me was an ultimate challenge of creativity, managing teams, managing technology, all at the same time, and then managing like how you get it on a device, and the device, how the device was actually, a constant flux of change. So to me, it was just the challenge, the awesome challenge. You ask a guy, people that are like athletes, like, why did you climb this mountain? That's just crazy. Like, why? It was there. To me, VR was there. It was to be like, it was a challenge, and the challenge was awesome. Making image scroll on a page and have comments and make that load fast in a browser or a phone. I did that. It's super simple for me. It's not a challenge.
Tell us about the transition from Buzz Media to Weaver. What was that like?
So for me, so like Buzz Media for me was a tremendous opportunity, just like, all the investors and all the team. The algorithm of Buzz Media became, quite odorous, meaning like we needed to kind of keep pushing imagery and content. And so we at such a frequency that it was just exhausting to kind of achieve ad dollar, to achieve the revenue that we needed to achieve. And I felt that as we needed to do, and that was the right thing for the business. And we did the right thing for the business because that was our job and our mission. But for me as an individual, like that driving that much ad revenue, it felt like I wasn't the right person to run that business anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd mentioned in the bio there that we had to buy 45 brands. It was like, we were like raising money and buying brands and then working really hard. And what happens in there is like, you lose product, the speed in which it goes, you actually kind of go for like a product design of like good enough, you know what I mean? And the ad spend requires you to do sort of like a kind of yoga that was very uncomfortable for me. Like I was stretched out very too thin. And so I really wanted to go back to first principles, which was like, actually, how do I make great just products, and that the product itself would be bought by the consumer. I wanted to remove myself from the pure advertiser funding this so that the consumer could have this. The problem with like when the advertiser is funding it so the consumer can have it, it requires it requires that we're exploiting the consumer in a way that makes them sort of, like coming back all the time, come back all the time. And and I'd rather have a relationship with the consumer where they're saying like, hey, I'm going to give you money for the product. Please make this product great. And so my evolution from Buzz Media, I literally took some time off, and then I partnered with an actor named Ashton Kutcher, and I ran his company for 3 years. And so I went back to becoming instead of being the entrepreneur, I became the president of a company for an entrepreneur, which was Ashton. And I was just providing maximum service to the entrepreneur. And it took the And I took back from being the entrepreneur, the entrepreneur itself, became a service. And I spent a lot of time working with Ashton on social media and investing, and kind of had, as a result, had a broad view of a lot of activity that was happening in the space, and realized that that all of the like, you got to go back to 2010, 11, and 12, all of the apps were kind of hitting this maximum apex value. And where wasn't getting explored was this avant-garde area of indie games. And indie games were, so I was drawn to that, which then begot me VR. So I didn't leave the Buzz Media or Ashton's company for VR. What I was really looking at was, again, permissionless media, really avant-garde, fringe thinkers and creators. And really, to me, and still is today, is indie game devs. They're the most fringe and interesting and creative, because the business model and everything around it is unmolested by advertisers and big business. It's really about like a small team of creators thinking about a really interesting idea that can be played. And really, that's what drew me to it. And then what happened was, at the same time I landed at Weaver with my co-founder, Neville Spiteri and Scott Yara, VR had happened. Like the DK1 got released on a Kickstarter, and we were early. Again, that was an avant-garde, like there was a couple people down in Long Beach, like putting this stuff together. And we were really drawn to that. Like we were really drawn to like, hey, that's a really interesting group. Like what are they doing? Let's help them. Let's put some money in there, because it was avant-garde. It was on the fringe. It had like almost zero chance of success. Like, you know what I mean? And so I'm drawn to that, because really that's where the coolest stuff is. That's where the most rarest, interestingest entrepreneurs in the world are. And we just went in there, and then we were like, hey, let's start making content for the VR thing. And then my colleagues at Weaver, we started doing the Blue, and that just kind of let us go down the line and make all this kind of cool stuff. So to answer your question more succinctly, I really wanted to get into a business model where we sold directly to the customer, and we didn't have to have advertisers in between us and the customer.
Talking about something that's not avant-garde, you were entrusted with what is one of, I'm sure, Warner Brothers' most iconic properties to create the Harry Potter experiences, Wizards Take Flight and Chaos at Hogwarts. Tell us about what that was like, and then we're going to talk about the Blue. Okay,
so that was an amazing journey, right? That was so exciting, and I'm still sort of like, just like I'm still kind of working on it with Warner Brothers and JK's team, but it was kind of one of those experiences where the story that, you know, I had relationships working at Warner Brothers. In particular, there was a fellow named Peter Giardi that was running this group inside of Warner Brothers called the Blue Ribbon Group, and they were looking at VR, kind of going like, hey, is this a thing? You know, like, what is this thing? And since I knew them, I was like, it's definitely a thing, and you know, Warner Brothers should definitely be working in it. And so we started doing some really interesting projects, a lot with like a mix of video and interactivity. And so we worked with Peter and a group inside of Warner Brothers to start making a project that was like interactive video, very exploratory, very avant-garde. And we had a lot of internal Warner Brothers success, meaning like it wasn't something that we were going to distribute, but like Warner Brothers was like, wow, that's really compelling, right? And so we you know, it's all about relationship building. So like one of the things is being a good entrepreneur is like, you have to build good relationships and always remain honest and build great products, right? And so we did that, and we were able to sort of get the at that time Kevin Sujihara, who was the CEO of the company, to believe in us. And there was a real, and when you're working with a big company like Warner Brothers, the core thing is you actually have to have that company, a Warner Brothers, believes in creative leadership. And so myself and Neville Spiteri and then later my co-director of the Harry Potter projects, Lewis Blackcollar, we became creative partners with them, right? So that's the way the studios work. They hire directors, they hire producers, they have trust, you know, they can do it. And so that's like the first step of the journey. And they asked us like, what would you want to work on? And I was like, Harry Potter, you know, it was like, you're going to take the shot. You're like, you know, Harry Potter. And they're all like, you know, like, yeah, okay. You know, and so we did an internal, again, another internal project for Harry Potter. And it was all internal. So we built like the castle, we built wand spell casting, you know, like you got to go in the Great Hall and light all the candelabras, you got to do. And so, and that took about a year. And what we did is we showed literally every executive in Warner Brothers. Like we took a sound stage on Warner Brothers lot in Burbank. We had stage 5 on the lot, and we would just bring all the executives through, and it was the first time they put VR on, and they were like, oh my God. And they were like,
that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, it was like a 20-foot square, you know, so they got to do that. And then once that was done, they were like, well, let's do it. And so we then flew to London and met with James McKnight, who was the chief creative officer for J.K. Rowling's team, the Blair Partnership. We explained what we wanted to do, and they kind of gave us a little space to do it in. And then when we brought it back to them, it was just like, they were like, you nailed it. Like, it's like, you can like before, it was so awesome because we were in the offices in London, and, you know, we really, so J.K. Rowling is one of the most probably iconic thinkers, writers, creative storytellers in the world. Like,
agreed.
It's one woman's vision. It's not like a team of people. It's one woman who created the entire world, and it's still a living world, right? You can't come in and change her world. It's a living world. And more importantly, it's owned by her fans too, right? Like, you can't go in and change Dumbledore or do anything crazy. So we have this like we had to weave a way through the story where we'd never change anything and completely honor J.K. Rowling and honor her fans. And so when we got to London and we showed what we did, we were working so far removed from like core characters like Dumbledore or Hagrid or Dobby or we were like really respectful. And when we showed what we could do, they were like, you can have Harry, you can't have Harry, but you can have Hagrid, you can have Dobby. And we were like, oh my gosh, like it was just like, it was like one of those moments where you're like, it's like, can I pull this off? Because there's so much, like, there's so many fans. Like, can we make this where the fans love it and not hate us? And so it was like really like an awesome like responsibility to manifest the world of Potter in 3-dimensional, fully rendered in interactive. And so they gave us that opportunity. And then we spent 2.5 years building it and releasing it in New York. And the fans, I watch YouTube videos of the fans, and they're always coming out just like completely like blown away, wanting more. You know, they want more of it, not less of it. Because if you think about it, you as a fan you got to let a great fan has read the books, and those draw powerful images. And then you go and see the movies, and the movies kind of let you lean back and watch one person's view of those images. But when you stand in it 3-dimensionally and come face to face with Dobby or Hagrid, and it's like size proportional, it's just transformational, right? And it's fun to see that. And we really had a great time making it. We're really excited to make more.
Incredible stuff. Now let's talk about the blue. I want to know a little bit about the inspiration behind the idea of this ocean experience. It's one of the most iconic VR titles to date. Can you talk a little bit about the inception, inspiration, creation, and development process?
Yeah, so that's a longer story, so I don't know how we're doing on time, but I mean, but the project of Blue. So one of our co-founders is a guy named Scott Yara, who I've worked with from really since I got started in the web, and he's always been working on this like digital life forms around the ocean. So this goes way back to the 90s. And that's been Scott Yara's sort of like personal passion project, right? And Neville Spiteri, my co-founder, so we're all three co-founders. Neville Spiteri, my co-founder, he had taken on the opportunity with Scott, with prior to me joining Weaver full time, to actually create a really high res digital version of the ocean. I mean,
Wow.
really high res, like killer. And it was for the flat screen. And so Weaver, Neville, Scott, they had been building this for quite a long time. And so it's a very rich world of three-dimensional rendered fish world, water world, under ocean world that's really massively, intensely beautiful. And so what happened was that was always part of Weaver, right? And when the DK1 came out, it was just, because we built it in Unity, it's only logical to kind of go like, let's put that, let's go underwater, right? It was just sort of like a natural DNA of the company to do that. And so, so that's where like the blue kind of really sort of always been part of Weaver's goal, to kind of create like a digital version of the ocean and all its sea life and the beauty of it. And so we really do believe that we're going to always go and do that. And so what happened was when we had the DK1, there's kind of a sub story how we got hooked up with Valve. I'm sure you know the company Valve, but Valve was the real owners of, or not the owners. They created the technology that inspired the Oculus team, and the Oculus team had one of the Valve systems in their offices in Long Beach, and which is the system in which Mark Zuckerberg had saw, right? And we then subsequently became friends with Valve, and then we got us the second one that existed outside of the Valve HQ. And so we really saw how powerful the headset's going to be, like the tracking, everything. And so we had sort of like a really early start. We had the DK1, but then we also had the Valve system in our office. And so we could really see, wow, you could really show the ocean, the water, the world underneath the ocean in vivid detail. And so an art team at Weaver got set up to go make the blue, which I think you're referring to as the encounter, which is the whale swims onto the boat, right? And so there's a fellow at the company, Jake Rowell, who sort of took on the mission of like, designing the whale and, leading the team to kind of create that. And for us internally, we always knew that like the word encounter was really kind of there. It's like, we really talked about like, looking something in the eye is really empowering, like it's kind of like, wow. Right. And so, the team really made this whale swim in on this boat and then like, kind of like creep up on you. And it just landed at the perfect time, right? It was like it was a very short vignette. It was when everyone was getting the first DK1s and Oculuses, and it was the best. I mean, just without, I didn't make the blue, so I can say this without sort of patting myself on the back. The team made the best VR experience ever, right? And it's the gateway into the world of VR for any developer, right? You go back and you look at the blue and people are like, I want to do that. And really, when you look at it, it's just the simplicity of it. It's like you're on a boat deck underwater, and then suddenly this whale noise comes and it just swims right up to you. And it just shows you the grand scale of what you can do inside of VR, which it's the only medium you can do that on. You can't do that on a film. You can't do that on a video game console screen. It's only done in VR. And I think that's what made everyone's head just go like, oh my God. And I meet people all the time that are in VR, that are making really great products, or they're making metaverse products. And they go, that product, the Blue Encounter, made me do what I do.
No, it's utterly beautiful. And I think that, yeah, it's quite inspirational as well, I think, for all the creators that are out there right now. Now, let's look forward. What are your predictions for what we describe as the metaverse in the next 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's, first of all, it's like it unequivocally will be profoundly omnipresent in our lives in 15 years. Like I want to take off the doubting Thomases that are like, oh my God, is the metaverse going to be here? It's like, it's sort of like saying like, I got asked.
Luckily, they don't tune into this podcast.
Yeah,
so that's good news.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone that's listening to this podcast that are makers of the metaverse, stay the course. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because you and we are going to make it happen. That's it, period. And you're only limited by our imagination. Again, in 94, when people ask me like, are we going to use the internet in 10 years? I mean, it's like, I was always like, yes, of course. Like, when I got asked in 2000, are cameras going to be on phones? I was like, yes, of course. Like move out of my way. Like, let's go. And so what I want to say to everyone that's listening is like, yes, the metaverse in 15 years is going to be profoundly part of our lives. And it's going to be creatively, I can't predict it because it's so creatively open for anything. Do you know what I mean? For the people that say that, like, oh, it's going to be isolating or changing this, or it's going to change. Listen, it's going to have a profound change on us as human beings in the way that we communicate or feel, because we're going to be able to transport ourselves into virtual worlds where we are going to be augmented. Like not it's augmented. It's like we're in a virtual world. We're going to feel different about how we're communicating with people. I actually think that the opportunity to be trolly will diminish because you're going to see an avatar where like you're not going to do that to that. The trolls happen because it's like I can just type these words in here and be gone. But it's like, no, I'm in this persistent world and I see this avatar. I know that avatar. That avatar is so and so. I can't troll them the same way. It will not be permitted. And so I see a world where it's like your virtual spaces will become as important as they are now in your Twitter or in your Instagram or your Telegram groups are as important to you now. They'll be equally as important in three-dimensional persistent metaverse spaces. In fact, the work that we will do together in those spaces will be equally profoundly important. So I feel like you will actually earn your living and your opportunities in that space. Just like if you asked an influencer 20 years ago, will you really make money blogging or talking to the video screen in your bedroom? And people, absolutely. Well, absolutely. In the metaverse, there will be people in the metaverse that will in real time manufacture something maybe 3D or magical or some potion that you can use in another space. You will go to that artisan in the metaverse and they will make it for you in real time and let you have it. And you will leave their metaverse retail experience and go down to the other experiences where you want to use that. So I think in 15 years, I can't predict all of the magic that will happen. I will just tell you that it's going to happen, period. And it will be transformational.
And what's next for you, Anthony, personally?
So, I'm at an age where I'm like, I wish I was 30 years younger, because like, I think in the next 30 years.
Don't we all?
Yeah. It's just going to be so rad, right? Like, it's just going to be like,
so cool. I know.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh,
about.
yeah.
All the things we dreamed about are going to happen. It's not fair, is it? We're going to be too old to enjoy it. That's not fair.
Exactly. So my mission right now is to lead by example. So we're making, Weaver's making a platform called WVS, which is like really a wrapper to help teams of all sizes, small to big, to actually accelerate their ideas. So when they're using Unity or Unreal, we're sort of like, we're building a platform for them to sort of coordinate the team and make it so they can make it faster. So in a sense, where I'm trying to do is I'm actually trying to help all of whether you're 30 or 40 or 20, I want to help accelerate you and your team to make the metaverse, right? And that will come with making software to help them do that. That will come with investing in their projects. That will come with mentoring. But like, I want to be an accelerator for them. Do you know what I mean? Because I really think that what is required right now is not people doubting it will happen. It's more like, no, let's help you make it happen. And so for the next
100%.
yeah, and so that's my mission in position in life, is really to help creators make the metaverse, continue to make sure the metaverse is not exploited by the wrong behaviors. So let's be inclusive, let's be genuine, let's resist the money grab, let's make communities rich where both the users and the makers win together. So let's work for win-win solutions, not win at the expense of our users. And so, and let's not throw rocks at our older products that exist. Like, we want the Fortnites and the World of Warcrafts and those great games. They are there for a reason, and that's great. And we want those companies to win too. But in our new space, it's going to be different, and it's okay. You know what I mean? So I want the world to be, you know, have a many colors of the rainbow exist in vibrance, and that's what I want.
Anthony, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Metaverse podcast. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a fascinating conversation. I'm honored to have you on the show.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you're here doing this, because I'm inspired by listening to podcasts. And I think it's a very important medium for people to listen and have people like yourself putting it together. It takes a lot of work, you know what I mean? And it takes a lot of dedication. And so I'm very honored to be on your show, and I hope the best for you. And if there's anything I can do for you and your podcast and your listeners, I'm available.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And yeah, I look forward to many more conversations going forward. You've been listening to Metaverse with me, Francis Hellier. Thank you so much to my guest, Anthony Batt, for a fantastic conversation. I wish we could continue for hours. Tweet us at Metaverse suggestions or feedback. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please do share a link on social media. You can sign up to receive an email when a new episode drops at our website, metaverse.fm.